Salams, namaste, wanakkam, sawubona. Welcome to another Tabloid Talk with me, Mohammed Ismail. We are broadcasting from our Durban North studios and we are well into our 5th show. Thank you to all our viewers on YouTube and on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page. And our Nandos competition is still running extra hot, would you believe? You can win a 1,000 Rand Nandos meal voucher. All you have to do is post a comment about your Nandos curbside experience. Competition closes on the 31st of October. Say your bit on the YouTube or in the YouTube comment section below. South Africa is buckling under a strained economy that has been hit hard following the COVID-19 lockdown. And hardest hit among businesses is probably the travel and tourism industry, not only in South Africa, but worldwide. It all came to a crashing halt in March this year. Fortunately now, as the country eases into lockdown level 1, travel is slowly opening again after the economic crunch. What does the future hold for domestic and international travel? Will the industry recover and regain its former glory? Is it advisable to travel across provinces and borders? What about Hajj and Umrah? Today we find out more as we speak to travel expert Nazir Malek. Welcome back to Tabloid Talk with me, Mohammed Ismail, broadcasting from our Durban North studios. With the travel and tourism industry having had its wings clipped with the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, South African tour operators have all but felt the economic crunch. Will the industry recover, and are travel agents optimistic about the near future as the December holidays fast approach? Let's find out more from one such operator, Mr. Nazir Malek, who's been in the industry for over 35 years. Nazir, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for your time for coming to the studio today.
Wa alaikum assalam, Muhammad Ismail. It's been a pleasure coming over and being part of your show. The question you asked, if our wings were clipped, I sometimes think whether it was dismantled.
Yeah, that's a serious thing.
It's an industry that's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's an industry that doesn't just constitute air travel. It is tourism and travel. It pertains to hotel, it pertains to tours, it pertains to museums, you name it. And everything had come to a complete standstill.
In fact, that's what I was going to ask you, Nazir, on the next one, that the travel industry came to a standstill, no doubt. It took an extremely hard knock with lockdown worldwide. And South African tour operators have been on, many of them have closed, many of them are struggling to sort of reboot their business. What do you see happening in the next few months? Is this industry going to recover, or are we still going to have a slump within, say, the next 3, 4, 5 or 6 months?
Mohammed, you must remember, it has affected the GDP of the country. And having done and said so, to put these infrastructures back into gear will take some time. Many major consortiums have closed already. So the infrastructure that we currently had, or we had in the past, have now, the gears have stopped. Now to gear all those gears and get into motion won't be a system that will take place overnight.
Nazir, you closed your offices?
I have. Yeah. It didn't make sense to keep my office open and incur any more expenses. And like me, all major corporate travel companies have all done the same, which made logical sense. You understand?
That has had severe economic impact. Are people going to recover from this? I know I asked something earlier, but the economic impact, loss of jobs, employment, getting back onto your feet.
This is what I'm coming to. Mohammed, with due respect, these might be a few hundred companies, but in the employ of these companies, there's thousands of employees. Their lives have come to a standstill. You know what? There was some compensation from the government, but that didn't see to the complete need of each home. So how do they recover? So they've been doing odd jobs, and so like we have been doing so too. But talk of the question of recover, I don't see that happening soon. Really, to bring it back to normalization or to a footing where you can say now that you've recovered the losses of the COVID-19, I would give it at least 2 years.
How many staff members did you have?
I had 20 staff members.
And
unfortunately, we had to release them all because there was no work whatsoever. Until now, there's still no work for them.
Yes, I was going to ask you, they have no option really at the end of the day.
100%. So every person has been finding alternate resources to find income from. So it is not just an industry that would, I think it's the worst hit industry in this country and globally. No other industry was hit as the travel and the tourism industry. Look at the current status right now. We don't have any foreign carriers coming in except from this week. The flights that have operated thus far have been only to repatriate expats. You, as the tourists that want to go to tourist destinations, you had no option of flying. Now that South Africa has opened its borders, and this is one thing that we need to really look carefully to. It is a wise decision, and also it has its negativity too. By us opening our borders, there's a likelihood that we might bring the COVID back into South Africa. With all due precautions taken by the government itself, wherein you have the 72-hour test prior to your arrival in South Africa, and if you don't, then you would be tested at your cost, and also you'll be quarantined at your cost. And similarly, like South Africa, all other countries in the world have their own mediums of checks and balances for you to enter the country. But if you look currently, right now, I think it's only Dubai that's open, Turkey that's open, Zanzibar that's open, and a few other small countries and other parts of Africa that's open to tourism. So you're looking at all of these things, and look at the second wave that has hit the UK and the States. So it's going to take long to normalize. We don't know. Maybe the new wave will hit. The second wave might hit us too.
There's already threats of the second wave, and Eastern Cape, they are preparing for a second wave. But you mentioned something about the 72-hour test. Now, if I want to travel overseas, say whichever country, I'll have to do the test here in South Africa, or would it be that when...
This is a requirement by South African government. We don't know what's the requirement. The country that you intend to go to, you'll have to speak to your local travel agent or the embassy of that country and see what are the specific requirements of that country for your entry.
But that's not going to make sense, Nazir. I'll tell you why. If I'm jumping on a plane and I'm going to Dubai, for example, and then they want me to quarantine or get a 72-hour test, you're on a very limited sort of a tour plan.
The time
so how's that going to work?
That is a challenge. And that's the reason why people have now restrained themselves. They don't want to go in a second country as a tourist and be confined to being quarantined and spend the time, and yet you spend so much of money. So these are some of the logistics that we are currently dealing with. And but you know what, Mohammed? Every day, new things are unfolding in the travel industry. As we get news from throughout the world, and especially the airlines. Currently, the airlines from abroad that are operating, Emirates will start its operation 4 flights weekly from Durban from Thursday onwards, 3 flights from Cape Town, and 10 flights out of Johannesburg. Qatar Airways will fly 19 flights out of South Africa, and similarly, the Turkish Airlines is already starting to operate because it's a destination that's open. But obviously the fares, that's what we need to think about. At this stage with the expat flights, the flights prices have been exorbitant because they had to give space between the passengers. Hence, the cost per person on flight, because of the cost of the route that they're operating, would have had to be absorbed by the persons in the flight.
In fact, this was one of the questions I was going to ask you a little bit later in the interview. To say, flights from Johannesburg to Durban, or Durban to Cape Town, or Johannesburg to Cape Town, the fares have escalated. I think it's higher than the cruising altitude of an aeroplane.
Sure.
Unfortunately. Now, what you're saying is because of social distancing on planes, has that contributed to higher fares?
Yes, it has.
That's unfair, isn't that unfair on travelers?
No, it is not unfair on travelers because there is a certain operating cost by an airline for a specific aircraft. And that has to, the airline has to sustain that by means of getting an income with the passengers on board. Hence, they would divide the cost of that operation to the number of seats that they would be occupying. But I've just heard with the domestic flights right now, all seats are being occupied. I've had a friend that just flew in from Cape Town the other day, and he said the flight was full to capacity. But the fares haven't come down.
Yeah, absolutely. But I believe like early morning flights, 6 o'clock in the morning, if you want to fly from Durban to Johannesburg, that you're going to get discounted flights there.
But it's not as what you got in the past. And you must also remember, there's limited airlines that are flying these routes.
And so which are the airlines flying now, Johannesburg, Durban,
Johannesburg? SAF Air that's flying at the moment.
SAA is still grounded in terms of their finances?
Mango, yes, they've had some problems, and I think until they don't come out of the woods, SAF Air would then be the carrier that would be carrying passengers domestically. Okay. But also, Mohammed, you must also remember, they went through a phase of 6 months or more where they haven't generated any income. And obviously, they ease that burden that they have sustained. They've got to now somehow, to maintain the operations of that airline, they've got to get it out somewhere along the line.
Well, let's hope so. Nazir, just a little bit on the Hajj industry. Earlier in the introduction, you said the travel and tourism industry is multi-trillion-dollar industry.
100%.
Hajj industry should be multi-million-dollar industry, if not more. Hajj was grounded to a halt this year. What impact did that have on our local or our South African economy in terms of people who had booked their packages and then had to cancel? It had a dire effect on you. People were upset. Unfortunately, this thing happened. But let's talk about the economics there.
Yeah, the economics of that, the people worst hit were, of course, the hoteliers in Saudi Arabia and, of course, the travel agents in South Africa. Because you must remember, from the time we consulted with a Haji till the time the COVID came, there was money, expenses that was incurred, namely your staff, your operational cost. And when the COVID hit, we were then asked by SAHUK, and of course, which was the right thing to do, is to refund the Hajis in full. So the operational cost for the period that we consulted with a pilgrim was gone down to zilch. Now, and therefore, we had no recourse.
Nazir, just something that's come to mind about SAHUK, right? SAHUK works on a list, accreditation list. Now, these Hajis from this year who had the accreditation, will this accreditation be carried forward,
yes,
or is it going to be a whole new pool? It's not going to be a new pool.
No, it won't be a new pool except those that don't have the resources still, because it could be possible that because they might have lost their jobs, they want to cancel this year, and somebody else might just take their place, or alternately those that have passed away or something like that. So the space need to be filled next year for that volume of people.
Are we expecting higher Hajj packages next year in terms of the cost? As it is, it's expensive to go for Hajj.
It's already. Yeah. It's already. I'm already worried about what might happen for Umrah. As you well know, Umrah is not yet open.
I was going to ask you that. Can we travel for Umrah? No, not at all.
No, you can't right now. We're hoping that it opens in November. Until now, for expats and local citizens, it is open. That means if you have an Iqama and you are employed in the kingdom, you are allowed to go to the kingdom. But now let's talk about this. This is very important. Currently, as at today, only 6,000 people are allowed to enter the haram. Each person or pilgrim is tagged and is allowed 3 hours in the precincts of the haram. So that is the way that the very strict control has been maintained to avert the COVID-19 pandemic in the haram itself. And it is understood. I mean, they have people from all around the world. So until they get the system to its perfection, I think that's only when they will open the doors to the rest of the world. We envisage that to some portion that it should be open in November. If not, definitely by January it should be. Allah willing.
I mean, look, we know there's no quota on Umrah travel, as it were, but
I think there will be.
There will be now. That's what I was going to ask you. Will there be a quota, just as much as we have a quota for Hajj?
Yes.
Now, with the South African quota system from SAHUK or from the Saudi Kingdom, for example, I think it's 2,500 or 3,000 people allowed to go for Hajj every year. Will there be, do you anticipate a reduction in the number of people traveling for Hajj next year if the industry does open?
Mohammed, I think with inshallah, by the grace of Allah, this COVID should be flattened by then and life should be back to its normal. But if it does not, then definitely there'll be restrictions that would be put in for Hajj itself. Because Hajj is so much of an interaction between people and there's lots of engagement with close quarters between people. But it's still a far away, period. And I think it should be cleared by then, inshallah. Now if they are hoping that by December, January, that Umrah should normalize and its full capacity, which is 120,000 people on the Tawaf ring, they're expecting that to take place between the period of December, January. They're envisaging that and they've got all the checks and balances for that right now.
Let's hope so. In fact, I was going to ask you, along with those lines, are you getting any inquiries for local travel for Umrah at the moment?
This is what we should do, Mohammed.
Yeah.
I think we should encourage people. First of all, there's all the checks and balances in places like Dubai and Turkey. They should not be discouraged in traveling to those destinations if the necessary precautions are taken. Okay? With respect to local travels, there's something that we don't take cognizance of. We have a very beautiful country. Before I could come from the office, I received an email where the blue train is discounted by 50%. It is something that we don't take advantage of. And it's a phenomenal experience to travel from Pretoria to Cape Town or vice versa on the blue train. It's an experience that is, by far very, very good. I've sent people and they were very, very thrilled with that. So things like that, to Cape Town, to the Eastern Cape and, places like that. There's so much that we need to explore in our own country. And I would encourage people to do that, really.
Costs and packages, right? So a December trip to Mauritius, for example, let's start with something international and talk about local. So as opposed to spending 20,000 Rand for a December holiday to Mauritius, I'm envisaging now there's going to be almost double. Am I correct in that?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
And local destinations, Johannesburgers coming to Durban, wanting to spend a week or 2 weeks in Durban.
It hasn't been cheap. When I looked at flights and accommodation just lately for people that wanted to come from Johannesburg, it wasn't so cheap, but still cheaper than going abroad. Yeah.
But with hotels laying empty for such a long time, okay, is it not sensible, or does it not make business sense for them to give you reduced rates to encourage the tourism?
That may be the case. That may be the case. I've just spoken to somebody from Emirates Airlines before I came to the show, and they were thinking of coming up with fares that would encourage people to go to Dubai. And I said, to what extent are you talking about? They said, if we had to come up with a fare plus a 3 to 4 star accommodation in Dubai to the value of 10,000 Rand, would that be acceptable by the traveling public? I said, very well it would. Because today, Mohammed, if you take a flight to Cape Town, okay, if you take a return flight is no less than 3,000 to 4,000 Rand per person to Cape Town. If you had to take an accommodation in Cape Town, nothing less than 1,500 Rand per room. Add the both up, you'd come to approximately 8,000 Rand. Why wouldn't anybody want to go to Dubai for 10,000 Rand than to fly to Cape Town for 8,000 Rand?
That we're just talking about a package. We're not talking about tourism like going onto Table Mountain and going to the canal walk.
That excludes that, yes.
That excludes that. But it'll be far more expensive to go up onto the cable car to go to Table Mountain now than it would have been in the past. And then you've got, of course, the factoring in of social distancing.
We are assuming,
how
you and I are assuming that it might be expensive. Yeah. But, considering the financial status of the country and the travel and tourism industry, I hope they do take decisions like you and I thought, which would be logical, where they would bring their prices down to encourage tourism and travel in the country itself. What's most important is that I think where we need to take advantage of is that now that our borders are open, to encourage inbound tourism instead of outbound tourism, so that the dollars and the pounds, to the people that own the dollars and the pounds, it's a much cheaper destination to be in South Africa and explore and enjoy a tourist destination. And I think that will be a big boom, Mohammed. Really, I think it will be a big boom. Those that are in the travel industry and have some kind of experience, I would recommend that they get equipped for that, considering the fact that South Africa has opened its borders to the people from the outside world to come into, which very rarely other countries have done.
But there's still restrictions on many countries with their carriers coming to the country. When you're talking about inbound tourism, Emirates cancelled and they now coming back and they're flying again. There was some issue around the COVID testing and those kind of things,
It's
right?
a technical issue.
Technical issues, but with that, is it still advisable, and this is a serious question, is it advisable for us as South Africans bringing in those inbound tourists, and is it advisable for us to travel overseas?
You know, Mohammed,
It might be a biased question because
it's
you're
a
an
yes and
operator.
a no.
Yeah.
It's a yes and a no. But life has to carry on, Mohammed. Life has to carry on. What needs to happen is greater precautions need to be taken. If all the precautions and the check and balances are put into place, then it should be okay.
You've probably been looking at those checks and balances, but if I want to travel overseas tomorrow, which are the safest countries to go to in terms of COVID? Because look, if you want to go to Russia, I don't think you want to go to Russia because they're high on the chart. America, it's heavy. You know, there are many places that are very heavy. So which are the sort of safest countries
Currently,
to go to?
Dubai is open, Turkey is open, Zanzibar is open. Okay? The rest of them, by certain limitations, you are allowed access, maybe for business or if you are an expat to that country. And all African countries are currently open to go to and visit.
Any tips, suggestions before we round off to our viewers? If they want to travel, what should they really do, the considerations they should take, and of course, the kind of packages they should look
Mohammed, I think, you know, everybody's starving right now. I'm talking about those that are affluent. Obviously, the middle class man, he's used his resources that he's had and built over the years. But those that have the resources, the financial resources, they are just waiting to travel. And I think if they take the necessary precautions and advice by the local travel agent, and of the destination that they intend to travel, then they must do so. Life has to carry on.
Absolutely.
Life
I
has
think
to
I'm going to
carry
be sticking in Overport for now, Nazir.
You can do so as well.
Thank you very much, Jazakallah, for your time and effort.
It's only a pleasure.
And it was a pleasure understanding the travel industry and tourism. There you have it, viewers. Nazir Malek from Nazir Malek Travel and Tours. He's been in the industry for over 35 years. Some good advices there on your travel. And if you need to consider packages, take in cognizance the fact of which destinations you want to go to.
I just want to add something to this. Life patterns have changed in the travel industry and other industries. If you look at it, the online tool has become the order of the day. And everybody has now adopted this online tool because they had limited access to public in direct contact. And one such tool is also out from India, and it gives fantastic deals to India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and all of that, and that's called Tour Zoo. People need to look at that, and like that similarly, everybody else has come about with these online tools. So if you want more to know about destinations, there's lots of online travel tools that you can look at. And what's been happening, the reason they've been adopting these online tools, booking tools, is because it's cost efficient.
Stay tuned for more details after this year. We're coming back with information on the competition, winners from last week, and what has been going on in terms of our social media platforms. So thank you for watching. Don't go away. We'll be right back. And there it is, travel or not to travel, the choice is yours. However, be mindful of the effects of the still very much prevalent novel coronavirus. While prices on travel packages seemingly escalate, people need a break now more than ever, following a very stressful lockdown period. And to everyone watching, commenting and sharing our videos on YouTube and Facebook, thank you, and please keep that chain going. And thank you to our sponsors for the wonderful prizes for our subscribers on YouTube. Remember to like our Facebook page and YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button for regular updates. Tabloid Talk is a show that addresses important issues on all levels. So keep watching as we unpack matters of importance. Thank you for watching. I am your host, Mohammed Ismail, right here in our Durban North studios. Take care.